Welcome everybody to what is a unique, a very unique show, and you're you're probably going to be you're going to get to meet some people who are very important to me. You're going to get to meet my battle buddy in Iraq, with whom I've been through a lot, and you're going to get to meet some special forces heroes um, that are really, really important, iconic even. And people, right now, people are planning lake trips and, maybe not as much as they were before because of the pandemic. But this weekend is supposed to mean remembering those we've lost. And as I have gotten into the world of whiskey, I have come to learn that there are a lot of people who are of like minds, and that this weekend should be about remembering them. I'm very fortunate that Bardstown Bourbon Company reached out to me and wanted to do something about this weekend. So I said, you know what? Let's make ourselves uncomfortable. Let's let's get on the show and let's talk about the people we lost. Because you know what? Memorial Day is not about your mattress sale. It's not about the car deal. It's not about getting a 50% off of your dishwasher, or maybe getting a free oil change or a sandwich. That's not what Memorial Day is about. And Memorial Day is not about me. It's not about the people who served. It's not about the sacrifices that we made, which were many, but our day is Veterans Day. Today, tomorrow, this weekend, it's about the people who paid the ultimate sacrifice for the United States of America. And I'm just a whiskey writer, but this is something that has always bugged me about our country, is that we do not give the people who have fallen the proper somber moment that they deserve. Now, everybody wants to turn this into a big political thing, but you know what? When that bullet hit, when that IED hits, when that sniper kills one of ours, that bullet doesn't know that the person is Republican or Democrat. It doesn't care what your family's legacy or history is. And that person who was wearing the uniform, they did not join the military for political reasons. And they did not choose to go into battle. People made those decisions for them. But you know what? We made an oath. Every person who served made an oath that they would protect our country from enemies, foreign and domestic. And so they don't have a choice. They don't have a choice to not go into war. Oh, they can make a choice. They can, they can go AWOL. Yeah, that's a bad choice, by the way. There's a lot of things that you could do. There have been people who broke their legs to get out of deployments. There have been people who have found, made things up to get out of it. But those who go and those who pass away, they did not have a choice. They volunteered to be in the U.S. Army to serve, but they do not choose which wars they fight in. And so anybody who wants to take any of this, anything that I'm doing here, and turn it into a political, messaging about one president or another or anything like that, this is just not the place. This is the moment that we respect and we pay homage to those who have fallen. And tonight, we're going to hear from some great men. And we talk about the heroes who paid the ultimate sacrifice. And I'm very happy to also bring in my cousins who have known me for a very long time. They're beautiful musicians, and they're coming on to play Amazing Grace. Nicole, Jamie, how are you?
Great. I'm doing good.
Floor is yours.
Thank you. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I was lost, and I was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious is that grace appeared the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, we have already come. Was grace hath brought us safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. When we been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun. We've known less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, absolutely.
One quick thing. That's a mini Fred.
Oh, we love you.
Yes, so
Yep.
cute. Yes, super handsome. But we love you from here in Oklahoma.
Love you.
Bye.
Yep.
You too.
Bye.
Oh, that's right. I muted myself. I muted myself during the. I muted myself during while they were playing, so you wouldn't hear me, and I didn't unmute. I'm a little. I'm a little different tonight. Normally I've got it all figured out and everything, but tonight I don't want to say I'm not on edge or anything like that, but I'm really emotional, and I'm thinking about all the friends I lost, and I'm thinking about people that you all don't even know that you know that had an impact on my life. And you're going to see that in this interview, you're going to see and learn about some of those people. But I want to tell you about someone else who was not an American soldier, but he did die in the service of our country, and his name was Samir. Uh, he was he was our interpreter, and he basically served as our interpreter because he wanted a better life for his children, and the insurgents caught him, and he managed to get away. So fortunately, the end result that could have been much worse did not happen. He was taken down by bullets in the streets of Mosul. But Samir, to me, was the reason why, was at the time, he was what Iraq was to me. And he was a beautiful human being, always talked about his family and wanting to come to the United States, and um, he was great. He was great. So if you get a chance, uh, look up Samir in my book Camera Boy, and yeah. But this is not. I'm normally doing whiskey tastings here, and you all normally know the side of me that is dancing and talking about whiskey or whatever. Um, but in my heart, who I will always be is a soldier, and I thought that I was going to be a soldier for life. I thought I was going to retire, and then things happen, and the one thing that I what pains me the most about the service to our country is that when we come home, that appreciation for loss is gone in pop culture. And people don't want to take that time to hurt and be somber and think about those people who died. And that's what tonight is. Tonight is about listening to the stories of some great men. And we talked about women who passed as well. But it's about remembering them. It's about remembering them. So, without further ado, this was pre-recorded because, because we didn't know how it would go live. So, please enjoy. Gentlemen, thanks for joining me in what is a very special episode of the Fred Minnick Show, and that is to remember the fallen on Memorial Day. This is not something that a lot of people want to take the time to do. Not a lot of people want to really focus on Memorial Day for the reasons that it was created. But all four of us are veterans, and I'm damn proud to call you brothers. So, and one of you has a shitload of dirt on me. So,
Where do I start?
yeah, well, we're gonna remember this is recorded, so I can edit anything out, Brian. But the amount of dirt that Brian has on me would fill an encyclopedia series, not just a book, but
Just from that 1 year.
just from 1 year. Yeah. But I'd like everybody to introduce themselves and tell us your branch of service and where all you served. And Brad Holling, I'll start with you, sir. How you doing?
I am doing well. First, I just want to thank you because this, I do consider this a real opportunity and appreciate it to be able to go and publicly recognize, commemorate, and remember all the fallen, but especially to have the opportunity to, talk about a friend. So thanks for that, Fred.
Absolutely.
So I'm Brad Holling. I joined the service in 1980. I started in Fort Carson, Colorado, with the 4th Infantry Division as a 4th engineer, and did a couple years in the regular Army, and then eventually I tried out for Special Forces and went that route. And I served with the 7th Special Forces. I served with the 10th Special Forces, and then eventually, after about 10 years, I went into a Special Missions unit in Berlin and served there. Came out of there and continued with the Special Missions unit, and then retired. And I had 20 plus years. After I retired, I continued to do contract work right here at Fort Bragg. I still continue to do contract work as an instructor, and continue to serve in some capacity and feel like I can give something back.
Well, and you're I don't know about you, Mark, but I'm pretty sure Brad can still pass the PT test. I don't think Brian and I can pull that off right now.
No.
He's tough. I've seen his Instagram.
I know he's like one of these male models on. He's like an Instagram model,
I don't know about that.
But Brad, it's an honor to have you on. You yourself are an iconic hero, and I think when someone of your level of service is still so eager to share the stories of the people they lost, I think that helps other people understand the depth and the hurt that everybody who ever served still feels for when we come to this day. Memorial Day is not easy, and you've been at it for a long time. Are there some Memorial Days that are easier than others for you?
It's a funny thing because, as you know, there's the National Memorial Day that we all recognize. But for everybody who's lost somebody, they also celebrate that day that they lost that person. And, being associated with the military now for 29 years, there's a lot of days that, I'm remembering, buddies. So I don't know that one is any different than the other. I think, I lost my leg in Smiley, so that's a big one, and it was a big hit for Task Force Ranger. We lost 18 guys that day, so obviously that's a pretty big one. But it doesn't matter if it's 18 or 1. They're all meaningful dates, and I pretty much treat them all the same.
Well said, my friend. Well said. Mark, you you were in the sandbox, I think, the same time as Brian and I a couple times. Give us some background on your service.
Well, I came into the Army right out of college. I just didn't want to get a job is my real excuse. And in 1984, chased Brad around, wound up at Fort Carson for a few years in the 4th Infantry doing the big Army stuff. Went to the first Gulf War with the 82nd Airborne as a company commander, and then kept on the path that folks told me I was supposed to be on, and I wound up in D.C. at a desk job, not what I was looking forward to. So somebody told me I ought to go try out for special operations. I did, and in '95 I went back to Fort Bragg and kind of got stuck there for the next until I retired for the most part in 2009. So I did, the Bosnia spins, the Middle East, Africa stuff, and then wound up in Pakistan, Afghanistan right after 9/11, and then back into Iraq in 2003. And I basically did Iraq from 2003 until 2009 when I came out. And, I did 6 or 7 months. We did different spins in the big Army. We did shorter tours. So we were over there for about 4 to 6 months at a time, and got plenty of that sandbox specifically. So,
wow, you've and now you're running Bardstown Bourbon Company, and one of the things that I have found is that the bourbon industry has a very special connection to the military, and that goes back to basically to distillers supplying infantrymen with whiskey, for medicinal purposes back in the day. So, and this whole thing came about because your team really wanted to do something, so I applaud you for having the desire to, really do something that's uncomfortable for a lot of people. This is not, let's face it, what we're going to talk about here. It's not comfortable. And I believe that Memorial Day is about being uncomfortable so you can see the sacrifice that other people have made for our freedom. So, give me some thought process that you had about coming into this and why you really wanted to, have a moment to remember Memorial Day for the soldiers and not the mattress sales and everything else that we see.
Yeah, well, you said my team pushed this, right? Look, I'm very proud to be on a team again. You guys know from your military experience, I played team sports growing up. The Army was a perfect team sport for me for 26 years. So, I did consulting gigs for about 10 years until my lucky day of stepping in as CEO of Bardstown Bourbon Company last September. And I'm telling you, I'm every bit as proud to drive in there every day, same as I was back in the military and into the units that I was able to drive into. You can sense the pride of what goes on there, and that everybody is proud to drive to work and be a part of that, and works real hard to maintain that. And that's exactly the same kind of sense I got out of all the special operators I was able to work around for years and years and years. So, look, we've got a bunch of vets down there. I've got John Hargrove, who's a up and coming. He's a savant in our world and doing great things with that, not only our products, but as soon as I came in, I promoted him to a COO because he's really the backbone of what goes on with our team there. I've got a guy running my visitors experience who jumped into northern Iraq in 2003 with the 173rd Airborne. So I've got a 82nd guy on my on one of my cooking. He's on one of the cookers as a shift lead there. So a lot of great things going on with the vet community. John Hargrove, when he first got there, we didn't have a flagpole. John's like, unacceptable. Put a flagpole up, right? Had a cool little plaque put in the ground for vets. As soon as I got there, I said, flag's not big enough, double the size of the flag. So we now have a very big, beautiful flag flying in front of our very modern facility And again, it's just that piece of pride. And so for me, I see these as opportunities to talk about the great things that we all shared with our friends and our military mates there throughout the years. So appreciate you inviting me on.
Heck yeah, man. We've been talking about, every time we talk, I feel like, I'm a sergeant again. It's like we kind of get back into that military groove. And I'll tell you, this next guy, this might be tough on me, guys, because Jopek was my battle buddy, and we shared
I'm still your battle buddy.
well. We shared quarters, if you will, and to be honest with you, the way our unit operated was we would go out on teams, and we were actually very rarely together. And our job was basically to document combat and or civil operations. And I spent a lot of time with Fifth Group training Iraqi forces. And I tell you what, there was probably not a more dangerous job in all of Iraq than going on a patrol with a fresh set of Iraqi troops, because you never knew, when they would start shooting or when they would pass out, or it was not easy. But we lost a lot of good friends there, and Brian and I have been through a lot together. So, but I don't spend a lot of time talking to you about your past military service. So, Brian, you retired from the Guard as a staff sergeant. Give us your full, military background.
Well, at the time I joined the Kansas Army Guard in 1990, I had been doing radio. I had 10 years in commercial radio, and I was in between jobs, and I decided to go ahead and join. It was something that I'd been thinking about for quite a while. So I joined the Guard, did my basic training in AIT at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. Started out as a truck driver, oddly enough. And then about a year or so into my time with the Combat Engineer Battalion in Southeast Kansas, I was approached by the Battalion Sergeant Major about an opportunity to be in a public affairs unit up in Topeka. And by virtue of my civilian job, radio, broadcasting, I ended up doing public affairs for the next 20 years up until my retirement, military public affairs. And in early 2002, I transferred to the Wisconsin Army Guard. That's where I met Fred in the 139th MPAD. At the time, we were Detachment 1 of the 139th MPAD. Ultimately, we got deployed to Iraq. We were there for almost a year. Saw a lot of shit. Lost some people. But there was always things like NCO Alley. Anybody who's ever read Fred's book Camera Boy or read some of his blog posts from back in the day, I don't know, Fred, if those are even still around. And some of the antics that occurred to take some of the stress off the situation. It was a place to go when Fred would come back from a mission. Place to share and a place to talk about stuff. Then when we got back in January 2005, I had continued my career in the military, and I retired in 2011. Before I did that, my oldest boy, Ryan, had joined the Wisconsin Army Guard in November of 2003, about a month before Fred and I went to Fort McCoy for our mobilization training for our Iraq deployment. And I don't know, it's a couple months after we got back in January of 2005, Ryan, my son Ryan, and his his company with the cavalry unit were mixed in with the 127, the 2nd of the 127th Infantry, the Wisconsin Army Guard, and they began to prepare to go to Southwest Asia. And they left in August of 2005 from Camp Shelby, Mississippi. And about a year later, it was almost a year later, Ryan called me up one night on July 23rd, 2006. Never forget it. To tell me that he volunteered to go on one last convoy security mission up to Mosul, because he told me he wanted to see some of what Fred and myself and some of the other people in our unit had seen up there. Bob Merez, Diamondback across the street, those kind of places where his convoy would be coming in. So he volunteered to go on that mission. He didn't have to go. He could have been packing his stuff up and getting ready to come home with the rest of his unit. But it was a left seat, right seat type mission. There were 4 people in his gun truck. The other 3 guys were with the replacement unit. So it was he was kind of along as a advisor, because he'd been on I don't know how many missions up to that point. And then it was about a week later, they had just left forward operating base Spiker outside of Tikrit, and an IED detonated next to his gun truck, and he was gone. Fortunately, the driver of the gun truck was able to get the vehicle out of the kill zone and mitigate casualties. It could have been a lot worse. He was able to do that and get him out of the kill zone. But Ryan was gone, and I was able to continue my career another few years before I was medically retired in August of 2011. Before I did, though, I did one more deployment to U.S. Naval Station Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. Our public affairs unit supported Joint Task Force Guantanamo, the detention group there at Gitmo. So I ended up with just shy of 21 and a half years in the Guard. And my youngest boy, Stephen, right now is in the Army Reserve. My dad served in the 50s. So there's a little military background there in the family.
Brian, how old was your son?
He had just turned 20 in June. He had come home in June of 2006. His birthday is on June 1st. So this time of year kind of sucks all the way around,
Sure.
Memorial Day, and then his birthday's on June 1st. But he wanted to come home for his birthday. And then his sister, Jessica, she graduated from Merrill High School just a couple of days later. He wanted to be here for that. And he was able to be here for that. And he was one of the last guys in his battalion to have a leave, because they were supposed to come home in August of 06, and they did. The rest of the battalion did, but they did squeeze in. He was able to squeeze in a 2-week leave period in June. He bought a new Mustang. He had a pickup truck named Walter. Fred knows all about Walter. It's a 66 Chevy half-ton that Ryan bought when he was 14, when we lived in Kansas. He bought it for like $360, and after he was KIA, it was fully restored from the frame up. And I in a normal year, I'd take it to car shows in the summertime and that sort of thing. But when he was home, he bought a brand new 2006 Ford Mustang, which he was also kind of proud of. He actually put almost 2,000 miles on it before he had to go back to Southwest Asia. He made a trip over to Minneapolis to see relatives over there, and so on and so forth. So, and the day I took him back to Central Wisconsin Airport in Mosinee. It was on June 16th. I'm one of these people that the dates just kind of stick with me. And I went to the house in Merrill and to pick Ryan up to go to the airport. And it was like 5 o'clock. He was like, dark 30. And he was sprawled out on the couch. And we got in the car. He drove the Mustang, and we had the stereo cranked up all the way to the airport. I mean, we listened to Hart, Zeppelin. He threw some hip hop stuff in there that he'd been starting to get into some hip hop stuff. And got to the airport. While we were waiting there for the bird, we were talking, and I told him, I said, I know your time is short, but, and I literally told him this. I said, your pucker factor better be way up there when you leave the wire. Because I knew he still had some more missions to do, even though the replacement unit was there on the ground. And he said, oh, Dad, don't, the new guys are there. And I said, I don't care. You can't get complacent. You can't. You should know this by now. You can't get complacent. Anyway, the plane got there, and he walked towards the exit, towards the entrance to the bird, and he turned around, and the last thing my son said to me in person was, "I love you, Dad. Don't blow my speakers." Because I think he figured I was gonna, when I took the Mustang back, I was gonna have the stereo blasting. He knows me. That's what I do in my own cars. I have the stereo on real loud all the time. So yeah, that was and then less than 2 months later, he's gone. So
That's a tough share. My condolences. Thanks for sharing that, though.
appreciate it. Thank you. It is tough.
Or still got the Mustang?
His mom has the truck and the Mustang. She had a garage built a couple of years ago at her house. And she keeps both the Mustang and Walter. The truck is named for Walter Payton of the Bears, in case you. Right after Ryan bought it, when we lived in Kansas, his mom just started calling it Walter, and it just stuck. And it's one of those things where the Payton family, Walter Payton's widow, his son Jarrett, they're all very well aware of Walter. And one of these days, I talked to Ryan's brother Steven, and I met Jarrett Payton just before the Chicago Bears Detroit Lions game last season. And I talked to him. We talked to Jarrett about at some point I'd like to get Connie Payton, Jarrett Payton, and Jarrett's sister all together, and whatever. Walter even has some grandkids now, but get them all together and have a picture taken with Ryan's truck. Walter, that's one of those things that's on the bucket list right now to get that coordinated. So
now, Brian, I know this holiday weekend, Memorial Day weekend, is kind of like Brad was saying. I mean, we feel it every day, and I know you have some days better than others, but what you do to remember your son every single day, and what you've done with that truck, taking it to competitions and everything. I mean, it's given the world a glimpse of who Ryan is. And I hope you at least know that people appreciate that.
when I take the truck to the shows, There are people that do ask. I mean, every so often there'll be someone they'll look at the pictures, and that sort of thing, and I'll be sitting there, and I've had people come up to me and say, "Okay, tell me the story about Ryan Jopek and his truck Walter." And I do, and I make damn sure to let people know that I'm just there because Ryan can't be, because he would be there to let them know how proud he is of that truck, because that truck was his baby. Even though he bought that new Mustang, Walter was something that he always was. He told me one time, no matter where he was in life, he was going to get it fixed up and keep it forever. So when I do take it to car shows, it's always registered. The owner is registered as Ryan Jopek because he still is. I'm just there. I'm just there to move it around for him. It's really all I'm doing. Yeah, it's just one of those things that I feel should be done. I know his mother feels should be done, and his brother and his sister. Everybody deals with it in a different way. You know, Fred knows this from my Facebook. I post a lot of stuff about Ryan, and I try to post stuff about the others as well.
You remember everybody.
I try to. I mean,
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that is because of not only my experience in the military, because as you guys know, it does bring it home a little bit closer, because by virtue of the military and the military service and friends you've lost and so on and so forth. But when you've lost one of your own, in my case, kids, in a conflict like that, it does. I don't know how to explain it. It just brings it everything a little closer. You get a little bit more of an understanding of what other people, other people are going through. It's one of those times when someone's talking about losing their kid like that. It's one of those times when you can honestly say, I know exactly what you're talking about. Because you know how many times when you're talking to somebody and they say, I know what you're talking about, and you're like, yeah, you don't. This is one of those times when I can honestly say to someone, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So it's very important to me, for a lot of reasons, to have not just Ryan not forgotten, but all of them. All of them.
Well, with that, I would like to take a moment. Everyone's got their bourbon here now.
Which one first?
I think the Discovery series.
Yeah. Good.
And I'd like to propose a toast to the young, bright-eyed, had more girlfriends than I certainly did at 20.
He was a ladies' man.
He was such a great kid. And there's not a day that goes by, Brian, that I don't think about him. There's not a day that goes by that anybody that served with you hasn't thought about him.
Fred, he would ask me about you when he'd call home. Sometimes he'd ask me, hey Dad, how's Fred doing? You know, that sort of thing. He didn't forget you. He didn't forget other people in the unit that he got to talk to. He asked about you quite frequently.
He probably thought he had to get even with me on something.
Yeah. Well, we won't get into that right
We
now.
won't share that story. Big book.
But his sister and brother still talk about that too. So
Yes, I'm sure they do. So to the 20-year-old Sergeant Ryan Jopek, beautiful in life, and your father has made sure the world knows everything about you, and we're proud. I'm so proud that I had the opportunity to know you, and I look forward to seeing you again one day, buddy.
we'll do it.
Cheers.
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 Oh man, Mark, this stuff is great. I hadn't had this stuff before. This is awesome.
It's really good. We've discovery is the art of blending for us. So it's all about finding great whiskeys, putting them together. We do it in a pretty unique way. We pull in our culinary team, our beverage team, and all our distilling team, and go through for some of these. We go through 50 different recipes before we come up with the right one. And we think we've gotten this one really right. So thanks for trying it.
I didn't know. I don't know much about Ryan's drinking background, but he wasn't old enough to sip. I think he would have enjoyed this, Brian.
I think so.
He would have been a sipper. I could see you and him out on the deck sipping a little whiskey.
Well, that was always one of the things I was looking forward to, was being able to have him come home and we could swap war stories. We did go out when he was home that last time. We went out to a bar on the west side of Merrill called the Rock Island and shot pool, smoked cigars. Because I was his parent with him, he could drink beer. I mean, so it was okay. So he had just turned 20, and we shot a few games of pool and smoked a couple cigars and drank a couple beers that night. And then I went back to Anago, and he went and he went out with some of his friends before he had to go back. So yeah, I think he would have. I think he would have liked this.
Well, I'm always, now that I'm a dad, and you always said that I'd be a good dad and all that, and you were, and I was very reluctant about it because, well, when you're a fit 25-year-old man, you're not thinking about marriage. You know what I'm saying? And now I try to make sure that my boys understand the meaning of Memorial Day, because it's not about the car sales. It's not about the mattress sales. It's supposed to be a somber day. And with being somber, bringing out those good memories is nice. Mark, you served a long time. I mean, you've got a very decorated career. Who would you like to remember today?
So, look, as Brian mentioned, I would never act like I know what he's gone through. I would never act like I know what Brad's gone through. I've somehow, with going through some pretty crazy times, I managed to come out fairly unscathed. Had great luck along the way and wind up running a bourbon company. So I don't have much to complain about. But I want to tell you about a guy named Joe Andres Jr. That was a suburb of Cleveland, Ohio guy. He came into regular Army and then got his way into special operations. 34 years old. He was killed in a firefight in Baqaba, just northeast of Baghdad. He was killed on Christmas Eve. At the time, I was actually the deputy commander of our organization then. So from summer 2005 to summer 2006. And so I would be either overseas, looking over the task force for my boss, or I'd be back home running the show. And on Christmas Eve, I was back home. So we had a pretty unique capability. And the big Army deals with notifications of family members, and they tag National Guard guys all around the world or all around the U.S. to go knock on doors, and often they don't know the family. They certainly don't know the family. They don't know sometimes even how to say the kid's name right. So it's a very awkward system, frankly. We were fortunate enough that we could do that ourselves. So I was the guy tagged to do that for Joe on Christmas Eve. We would take a colonel, either the commander or the deputy. We'd take a sergeant major. We'd take a chaplain, and it would actually take somebody who knew the guy. So we were very fortunate in that way. And we showed up in Ohio on the morning, Christmas Eve. And somehow our communication had gotten screwy with the Army, and the Army had sent someone, had been there about an hour before us. We didn't know that. We walked up to the door, and Mr. Joe Andre opened the door, saw me standing there, and said, "Yes, I know," and started to shut the door. And I got my foot in the door, and literally, and we worked our way in and probably spent 8 hours with the family that day, because they were so relieved that they got to talk about their son and got to hear stories about their son in a manner that, it's a lot of people don't get that kind of opportunity. So, although, again, totally different kind of hard, certainly one of the hardest things I've done. I ended up doing 4 of them. But Joe specifically, their parents literally and their family, their sisters were there, everybody. And they were, they left with the thought that very proud of their son again, where at first they kind of thought that's the best the Army could do when somebody showed up that way. So what I say over time is, although I didn't know Joe that well, I've gotten to know his family, because his family comes back to Fort Bragg every year on Memorial Day. We've got a cool little ceremony that takes place there. And unfortunately this year I'm not going to be there because I'm out here. But just to see the family come every year, and the family has grown since this happened in 2005. The family is proud of the organization and the support that they got. But more than that, they're proud of what, the unit and his friends thought about Joe. So my toast is not only to Joe, but to the families. And Brian, I didn't know your background when I thought about doing this, but look, it's you guys who do exactly what you're doing. Stand tall for your son, and keep the message going out there. So I just say cheers to Joe Andres Jr., to his whole family, and to all the families out there who are dealing with us. Thank you.
Cheers.
Mark, one of the things I wanted to say, related to those who have to do the knock on the door type thing. Just knowing the experience I had, Ryan's mom and I are divorced. They had to have 2 separate casualty notification teams that morning. And up until the time I was working I was on temporary duty orders with the Wisconsin Guard in Madison. Excuse me. And at the time, the 2 separate teams were linked up by cell phone. I mean, they literally were on the phone and knocked on the door, my door, the hotel door in Madison, and the door in Merrill, where Ryan's mom and brother and sister were, at the same time. That's how down to the second they had it. And then the message they had to deliver. Over the years, I've just thought about that, and what a gut wrenching job that's got to be to tell someone that, to give someone that news, especially not only my personal experience, but you watch movies like Taking Chance with Kevin Bacon, when he escorted that Marine's body home after he was KIA in Iraq. And um, I've over time I've just got to think about some of the other people that are involved in the notification process, and getting that troop home.
Yeah.
And so on.
Things with it. I'm not, in no way was I intending on busting what the Army does. It's a hard thing to think about, to do that all across the country like they do, and take care, like you were saying, to time it, and again, in no way am I trying to make this about me and about how hard that side of it was. It's totally different.
But you're part of it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I mean, you are part of the picture.
So I've run into some families in the airport, and you see when they first see me, I can see that flashback, same as I have when I see them. It is an immediate bond you have with somebody. So, I'm actually very proud to have done it the 4 times that I did it. And, you want it to be as good as it can for the family, because this is not going to be a good thing. But the way we were able to do it, I was so proud of, because we were very fortunate in that we could almost always bring someone who actually knew the soldier who had died. So that's something that was very, very good for the family, right?
I think that means a lot. I mean, to at least have the capability there, because some families at the time, they may not want to hear everything right away. They may have to have some time to process stuff. But you're right, being able to have somebody there who knew their soldier, or whoever, whatever branch of the military they happen to be, I think that's pretty important, to be able to have that capability.
Yeah, and Mark, you said, I know you weren't wanting to like bag on the Army. I think that's a whole nother episode where we could all probably take 1 hour of like the FUBAR things that the Army has to offer, And Brian, you've got a few of those, but this whole process. I remember, Brian, when we were in Iraq and we had to go cover the memorials. We would try to remember the fallen even while we're there, and we would have the boots, the M16, the dog tags. And God, I hated it. But it was also like I always did it because I had to. So what we did, Brad and Mark, is that we would film and take pictures of the memorial services in between like our combat missions. And we would package this stuff up, and we would write out the longest pieces to send to those hometown newspapers. And that was the one thing. I was the NCOIC of this, and that was the one thing I was like, we cannot miss this. We have to nail this, because that was going to be the last moment that community got to see, their kid. And those were gut wrenching. There's nothing easy about any of this. And I think that's the fact that we are here talking about this, the fact that we are willing to get uncomfortable, frankly, and, be very public about this, just shows you, I want that to show the people watching, like how much that the people who have fallen, how deeply connected that every service member is, and how we want this weekend to be about them and not us. And, Brad, when we were emailing, you sent over some very touching photos to me. I'm going to be showing those, but, you obviously had a very deep connection with the people you shared. And I kind of give you, the spotlight here. Tell us about, the people you wanna remember today.
Yeah. Okay. So, it's really moving to listen to Brian because for most of us, it's a mate. Um, I I can't imagine it being my son. So that's tough, and that when I said that's a tough uh, story to share, that's me not being in his shoes, and it's tough listening. So, to Brian, thanks for sharing that. I think it also made me think about a lot of things. It made me think about uh, we lose a lot of people to training accidents. We lose people,
Mhm.
you know, fast roping out of helicopters. We lose people in vehicle turnovers. We lose so many people that never are recognized for their service and contributions because maybe it wasn't in combat. And so I'd just like to recognize them. The other thing I'd like to recognize is, and I don't know what the current stats are for this, but uh, up to 2013, we had 149 women that we lost uh, on the fight in terror. So not often mentioned, not often talked about, but would like to recognize them as well.
Mhm.
But the guy I really want to talk about, and you will see it in the photo when as Fred posts it. There's three of us stand. There's four of us standing there. Unfortunately, I'm the only one today to tell the story. But it was the last photo that all of us were together in, and that was Somalia, in Mogadishu. And as you see the photo, I'm standing with the flag on my chest. To my left is Medal of Honor recipient Gary Gordon.
Mm.
Next to him is Medal of Honor recipient um, Randy Shugart. And then kneeling is Dan Bush. And I chose to talk about Dan Bush today because much is written about Gary and Randy. And so it doesn't, you don't have to dig very far and you can find out their story, but you'd have to dig to find out Dan Bush's story. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about Dan. And you guys may know where Dan's from. He's a Wisconsin guy. He came to our organization as a young guy. He came over from the Rangers. He was 25 years old, and he was from Portage, Wisconsin. Really had some great Midwest values. Strong Christian kid, strong in his faith. And one of the things that I really respected about Dan was it wasn't part-time. What you saw is what you got. And sometimes in the Army, being a strong Christian is a tough line to walk because everybody wants to challenge you. And Dan did a very good job of that. He was true to his faith. He was super and so anyhow, he came over. He was fairly new when we deployed to Somalia. I think Dan had maybe been in our organization for a year. So he went over as part of Task Force Ranger. He was a sniper, and I don't know. I mean, there's a timeline. I haven't really looked at. A lot of this stuff. I've only ever spoken about this really in a professional development for the Army. I waited 25 years for classification to go, even though the movie and the book was out. I did not elect to talk about it. Some of it because of that, because classification. Some of that just because I think I didn't want to. I think I was still, it was kind of one of those things, and you guys probably can relate to this. Is there's a time where you share it with your friends, but you're not ready to share it with everybody else. Your mates are different than the world, and so I did the first several years sharing it with mates. That's what I did. I didn't I didn't share it with the world. But you know, as I've gone on to Instagram, I've started to share because I want people to see the other pieces of these guys that are great Americans. You know, so Dan is one of those guys. He was in Somalia. He was on Super 6-1. He was on the first helicopter to get shot down, and he was part of a 3-man sniper team that was providing cover. And quite frankly, you know, had that bird not been shot down, there never would have been a movie. We never would have talked about it. And the truth is the Army would not have advanced to where they are today because all of that battle did huge things in how the Army and DOD and the other forces developed in terms of medical. They'd never had so many mass casualties on the battlefield. The equipment, the ballistics, the the weapon systems, the vehicles, all of it changed because of that event. But I think Dan was he was when the bird got hit, it went into an auto rotate, and I was on Super 6 to another helicopter and flying opposite of Dan, and I had heard over the comms that a bird got hit, and I don't think it surprised me because we'd done several other missions. That was one mission of several that we had done, and we had some close calls. They had hit another helicopter earlier in the week, and it was not part of the task force, but it was part of the quick reaction force. And so there was a part of me that wondered when the law of probability would come into effect. And it's not because they were great shooters. It was because they had a lot of RPG ammo, mm-hmm. and there were a lot of them. But anyhow, so they got hit. It went into a rotation and crashed. And as we came around and I recognized the wreckage, the first thing I wondered was if anybody had actually survived. And amazingly, the Black Hawk is an amazingly tough bird. They had, except for the 2 pilots. And the first man out of that helicopter, as we came around banking, and I could see it down, I could see the helo, and I watched the guy run out of that helo and run straight to the corner of a building and take up a position for security. And it was Dan. He immediately got out, wanted to secure a perimeter, protect the aircraft, and that's what he did. And he remained there momentarily, and then for whatever reason I couldn't see because of being in the helo. I couldn't see the situation on the ground. But Dan tried to cross the street, and I'm going to assume that he wanted to either get a better position or was going to aggress some kind of a target. And as he went to cross the street, he got hit and went down. One of the task force members grabbed Dan, pulled him back to safety. And then amazingly, the Army Aviation 160th, amazing pilots, brought in a little bird while there was fighting going on in the street. They came in immediately because they made the call that they thought he was critical. And he was. And so they got Dan on this little bird. They laid down some suppressive fire and got Dan moved to the little bird and got him off. And he made it to the MASH unit, and unfortunately, due to systemic infection, very, very quickly, Dan passed. For his action, Dan received the Silver Star and got a Purple Heart. But he was. There was no hesitation. The guy responded, immediately went to the defense of the aircraft, and I happened to see that one. So it's vivid in my memory. Anyhow, great guy, great husband. He was married. He unfortunately had a son, only 14 months old at the time. So he didn't get to father him, who's now a young man, but was just not only a great soldier, but just a good human being. To Dan.
To Dan.
To Dan.
Dan.
I have to admit, whiskey tastes a lot different after hearing stories of great men and women like that. And, Brad, after all these years, how in such a conflict that was talked about so publicly, I thank you for coming on and sharing that. I know that's not easy.
I kind of look at it like Mark's job, where when he had to knock on a door, it's an honorable thing, even though it's difficult. It's a terrible thing to have to do, but it's almost dutiful. I mean, it is dutiful. It's something that you should do, and I want to share those guys' stories, even when there's hurt, there's a responsibility to share their great deeds, and not just them as the warrior, but them as the man.
It's all part of not forgetting. That's all there is to it. Not forgetting who they were, what they did. It's just all part of it.
Yeah.
Hey,
well,
if I could, Fred, look, I'm proud to be on here with all of you guys, but I just want to, point out how highly respected Brad is in the special operations community. And it's part of because of the things that he just talked about that he doesn't talk a bunch about. It's awesome to have him share some stuff with us. He is, without any question, one of the most respected guys in our community. So thanks, Brad.
Thank you, sir.
I've done a lot of charity work with the Green Beret Foundation and the Navy SEALs, and the special forces, especially now. I feel like our country often takes them for granted, and mission after mission, in the dark, in the early mornings, things that are classified, things we don't know about. I've been on a few of those missions that even now are still classified, but as a whole, special forces, Brian, are constantly at a higher risk all the time because they just go. And so to hear a story about Dan like that, and really a story that became nationalized, it's a real privilege to hear that. And Mark, thank you as well, because I know, I'm at a loss. In a rare moment, I'm at a loss for words.
It doesn't happen too often.
No. Cheers to that. So I'd like to.
Oh man, that's good. That is so good.
It sits there too, the discovery.
So
Mark, I'm going to tell you, after we're done with the program, I'm gonna go to the cemetery in Merrill, and I'm in the middle of reading Ernie Pyle's "Here Is Your War," and I'm gonna go to the cemetery, sit my happy butt down there with Ryan, read him some of Ernie Pyle's book, smoke a cigar, and have some of this Bardstown, because this is really good stuff.
will you pour a little bit for Ryan?
Yeah, I will.
You weren't going to do it, were you? You're going to keep it all for yourself.
No, I'll pour some for Ryan.
All right. Hey, call me when you do that. Video me in.
Okay.
So
I'll read to you too.
I miss it when you used to read to me at night, or you'd have your phone calls with your girlfriend.
Oh yeah.
All right, I said I wouldn't get too much into the dirt. So, um, so I wanna take a moment to remember a sergeant I just spent a little time with. But sometimes you meet someone and you just genuinely like the person, you know. Yeah, it's like you just have a sense of appreciation and respect for who they are as a human. And that's Sergeant David Mitz from Oregon. And we went on some patrols together and some raids, and I was always somehow got attached to his squad, and he was a team leader. And just is what are those guys like? So how I worked was I would get attached to a squad. These people wouldn't know me from Adam, because my background was infantry. I could talk, I'd be able to kind of follow along a little bit, but it was, we would climb walls, knock down doors, everything that you did in that time. And Mitz was a guy I just hit it off with. I mean, we were joking. He had a kid on the way, and when in that December 2004, or November, December, I mean, like you,
It was December 4th.
It was December 4th. He got hit with a sniper round, and it was one of those. It's one of those things. It's like one of the most difficult things about what we did and the access we got. We would be around a lot of people who would eventually get killed. So we knew a lot of people who got killed. But David Mitz, to me, he was exactly what the Blue Cord was about. And the Blue Cord is the infantry cord. And he was a great infantryman. He was so great. He knew every direction. He knew how to move, all the while like being respectful to his subordinates and his peers and his officers, which, believe me, is not always the case. Sometimes you get someone who's a good soldier and they just suck at following orders, but he was great. And yeah, his dad and I have communicated a few times since, and I've tried to send them photos and stories, and it's just hard, because I wish I had more, to say, even now, even after all these years, I just feel lost. I feel lost when I think about him, because he was such an amazing human. He had such a great life ahead of him, and it was taken from us, as was his squad leader,
Sergeant T.
Fred,
Fred, you had mentioned some of what our job was over there, documenting the memorials.
Yeah.
And that one for T and Mitz, you and I were assigned to.
It's funny.
I did the video, and you did the photos.
Yeah, I blacked that out. Like I don't remember that. Like, there's still some chunks of that time. I'm sure anyone who's ever been in combat knows what I'm talking about, but there are a lot of black moments. Like I don't remember like a certain 3-month stretch, and that was a part of it. And
yeah,
that was highlights, but
it was because I knew that you knew Mitz. And you had mentioned that you had met T as well. Probably
Yeah,
didn't know him as well as you did.
No. Mitz and I would actually, like, so after we would go out on we went out on that mission, we would actually start eating lunch together in the chow hall, which I don't know what the situation was like for you, Mark, when you were in Iraq, but man, we had some really good food. We had these like Turkish chefs. They imported these Turkish chefs for us. My God, they could cook.
Yeah.
Did you have good food in Iraq, Mark?
We typically did okay. We had so many different places. It was, some guys ate well in some of the big mess halls, and some places we actually had our own cooks that we brought with us, and the other ones guys were living hard on MREs and whatever.
It was funny. It was funny. Like we'd have the we would have the really nice chow hall, and then right behind it they were like burning trash. But we would always link up, Brian, and we would just talk. And one of the things that we talked about was like, what was he going to name his kid? And he was going to name him after the guy on Little House on the Prairie, because that was like who he looked up to as like a overall human being, Michael Landon. So he was going to name him Michael Landon Mitz, and yes, sadly, his son was stillborn. So I mean that story doesn't get any better. Yeah, it's yeah. But Mitz was one of those people that you could see changing the world in some ways, with his like level of detail and just absolute professionalism and caring nature. Because I think that's probably what always stuck out with me with him is that he cared. And you get, there's a lot of squads that I would go out on with. They wouldn't care if they lost me in the middle of Talifar at 3 o'clock in the morning. So it was on me to stay with them. Whereas he was like always like, making sure that I was a part of the team. Like I wasn't there just documenting it with my M16, and I was a part of that squad. And yeah, so
there is a really, really indirect connection to the whole Black Hawk Down thing with this story. The video that I ultimately did for that memorial, the music I used was Hans Zimmer's No Man Left Behind from the Black Hawk Down soundtrack. So Brad, I thought you might appreciate that. To me, that's one of the most powerful pieces of music, not only for that particular that situation, that film, but I know a lot of times I'll be out on my deck, smoking a cigar at night, drinking some bourbon, and I'll put that one on there, and not just on Memorial Day, but throughout the year, throughout the summer. It's one of those pieces of music that that just helps me reflect on things, reflect on the people.
That's amazing. That's neat. Thanks for sharing that.
So, to Sergeant David Mitz.
There you go.
David Mitz, and to Sergeant T.
T and Mitz. They were one and the same.
Oh, wow, that's good.
Mark, I think Brian likes it.
Yes. I'm sitting in my office drinking bourbon.
Got a time for it. I mean,
Not something I can normally do on a work day.
So what's funny, he wasn't always a bourbon drinker.
No? Did you turn him, Fred?
I turned him.
Yeah, he turned me.
Good job. I'm just curious. So is everybody drinking just one, or are you doing the fusion, or what's the favorite?
Have we gone to something else? Or are we still
I we just started toasting, and this I didn't want to interrupt, but we could
I got to get another glass.
Well, I haven't had the Armagnac. I haven't had the Armagnac finish yet.
The Armagnac's been doing good, Fred. It's getting some good press out there.
Which one?
A lot of people are thinking it's one of the best we've done. So that's that Labode there.
Oh, how do you pronounce that?
Labode.
Labode.
But I'm sure
Because it looks like Laubade.
I'm sure the first person would tell you I screwed that all up. So
what's the price points on these?
So the fusions, the fusion obviously is the way we're bringing our own juice to the market. So look, none of our juice is old enough that we're going to put it out on the market yet. So fusion's using a source 12-year Kentucky bourbon, blending it with 2 of our young bourbons. So 3-year-old, 20% wheated and 36 rye. And the first one of that version we did, the juice was actually 2.5 years old, or 2 to 2.5 years old. And that won number 11 on Whiskey Advocate's top 20 whiskeys in the world. So we're real proud of the way our juice is coming to the market. We'll see where that one goes, but we're excited about 2023 when our juice will be 6 years old, which we think will be the right time for us to release ours. So hopefully in 23 you'll see ours coming out in our core products. But then we're into the art of blending, and we're into the finishes, and we've had some really great luck with the finishes. We do it a bit different than most in that we typically keep it in the barrels for 18 to 19 months, not a few months, which a lot more finishes are younger. So, but we do it at the right time. We take it out when we think it's right, not based on when we want to take it out and sell it. Right? It's our business model is unique in that we make bourbon for 27 other customers. So that's our core business right now as we grow our brand, and that keeps us in business so we can bring our products to the market when we think they're ready, not when we think we need cash flow. So we're real excited about them. That Armagnac, it was only 400-gallon barrels, so there's only 2,000 bottles out there, but it's pretty hot, and we've taken on a big supply of barrels from them again. So it'll come again in a bigger way. We got a cognac coming out. We got a finish with some plantation rum coming out. We're about to have an orange curacao come out. So we're really proud of the finishes and the way they've been doing. So
wow, yeah, the Armagnac one. This is really delicious.
Interesting.
So,
are we ready?
What did you pour that in your tea glass there?
Well, yeah, this is just a glass I picked up at Save More the other day for $1. But
yeah, glasses keep getting bigger. I like it.
Well, this other glass is I don't know where the hell I got this Jack Daniels glass from, but
I need to send you some. I guess did I not send you an England Karen's with the last shipment of whiskey?
Fred,
No.
You have not completely converted him.
Oh yeah.
No.
Brad, you'd be surprised.
Yeah.
He's actually, I think he's the #1 customer at his local retailer, Triggs.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Awesome.
He's
Big seller
That's awesome.
Saturday.
and he and his retailer buddy cussed me out frequently on the inability to get McKenna. I'm like, it's not my fault.
Yeah, that last bottle cost me $50. Thanks, pal.
Yeah. Fred causes a lot of
It
problems
used to
with
be
pricing.
28.
But I didn't answer your question though. The fusion goes for about 60. The discoveries are 129, and the finishes are tipping around 125 for us
Oh, okay.
when they hit retail.
That's too bad. It's not too bad. This is the first time I've noticed like the etching that you guys have on the back of the bottles.
Yes, those are pretty cool.
That's
we
gorgeous.
want to share with our folks that we work with the fusion, and discovery stay consistent, and then with the finishes, obviously, in our partner's brand, and then the whole piece about transparency. Look, we're modern in everything we do. We're modern in the way we decide what the actual recipe is going to be. We're collaborative in literally deciding the proof. It's all done through a bunch of blind tastings to get to what we think is the right product. And then we put it on the label. That's the thing that we think modern consumers want. They want to know what they're getting at. And you can see it on our labels. We're telling you exactly what's in the juice. There's no myth there. We've got Steve Nally, who's the whole history of bourbon. And we love honoring that history and tradition while we push innovation in everything we do with our products. So we're real proud of them.
Well, you got me.
Yeah, you guys are definitely you're like one of the most exciting distillers to watch right now for what you're doing for sure. And we're all hoping that we can come back and visit here pretty soon.
Well, we just opened up our restaurant yesterday. We're real limited menu. We're trying to sort that out. Look, it is hard for a restaurant to operate with the constraints that are being put on them right now, no matter where it is. But we're gonna start going. We'll probably around mid-June we'll start doing the tours again and hopefully getting a bunch of people out. But it's hard right now, so we're ready for it to keep opening up. Our main goal in life is to keep our operations safe and keep the back end going. Our tours initially won't go back in the distilling side. Through our glass, you'll be able to see everything. But we're protecting that above everything, obviously, and making sure we can continue making whiskey for our 27 plus customers right now. So, and
Brad, I think this is the first time in an interview that I haven't brought up the pandemic. In fact, I hadn't even thought about the pandemic throughout this entire interview.
Either right.
That is
Yeah, amazing.
It's actually.
Well, I hate to bring it up then because I'm not a fan. I want to get.
Yeah, I want to get over it, But,
Hey, real quick, Mark. I just and I don't have the palate obviously that Fred has or the experience, but this Discovery Series, one of the things that I really like about it, and actually is surprising to me, is when I look at it, you've got 10 years, 12 years, and 14-year-old bourbons in there, and I'm surprised that there isn't more oak and barrel flavor. Like sometimes you get these older bourbons and it tastes like nothing but the barrel. I really like the spice that's coming out of this, the maple that's coming out of it.
Right.
It's pretty amazing. This is from a guy who just likes to drink bourbon, and it's my favorite. Actually,
that's what I am.
What are your thoughts, Fred?
Well, I actually so I had this previously. And I think this is the second batch.
It is the second bourbon.
Yeah. So this is leaps and bounds better than the first batch.
Right.
So
I'm drinking the second batch.
Yeah, this has got some complexity to it. I mean, it's really nice.
Yeah, I think the first one, Fred, had a 5-year in there as well. So
yeah,
it was a different product, and every one of these is going to be different, right? Because
sure.
Literally just going out and finding great whiskey and then trying to use our process to come up with what we think is the best one we can, and we're very proud of it.
It's still accessible too. I mean, you said 69. You said
no. The Discovery is 129.
129. Okay. Well, you said 129. I heard 69. So
good luck.
I need to get my hearing checked.
That's wishful thinking. That's wishful thinking, Fred.
This juice is in it. It's good though.
We all had somebody we served with who was in the artillery, and every other word that they said is "huh," what? They couldn't hear anything. Maybe I'm becoming that guy. So the Armagnac, I really like. It's very it's very apricot-y. I like the fruitiness to it. Let's go to the Fusion.
Uh-oh. Now I gotta empty my other glass.
I kind of talked the Fusion up already. I mean, we're excited about this product. It's really been cool to see bourbon age. We kept the mash bill, or we kept the blend the same from Fusion 1 to Fusion 2. We'll see as we move forward, but we're real proud of this one and the recognition it's getting early. People love the fact that we're showing them exactly what's there, and frankly,
you might have to drive me home.
That's some good young juice that's going into a 12-year bourbon.
Yeah.
So we're proud of that.
Now, Brian, you did tell me we made arrangements to get you a ride home.
What's that?
Tell me that. You did tell me you were going to get a ride home.
Yeah. Our staff photographer, Dean Hall, is currently in the building. So if I need a ride, he can give me
We made a deal before we got on the show.
Yes, I know.
Made a deal.
I know.
We're all about responsibility.
Dean is just realizing that he's been voluntold.
All right, so here we are. This is a very unique blend of 12-year-old Kentucky bourbon of 74% corn, 18% rye, and 8% malted barley. 18% 3-year-old corn, 20% wheat, 12% malted barley, and 2 years, 10 months, 60% corn, 36% rye, and 4% malted barley. That's at 42%. So the numbers go 40, 18, 42. This is
50% our young juice. A 12-year great Kentucky bourbon. What's cool here, Fred, is you literally get a sense of what's going to come to the market with us, right? We're going to have that 20% wheat product. We're going to have a 36 rye product. And that's what you're going to see coming from us in 2023.
Wow.
We think. It could be a little earlier, could be a little later. We'll do it when it's ready. But we're currently guessing a 6-year product's coming out from us with those.
That's awesome.
That's pretty good.
All I know is tonight, when I'm sitting on my deck, drinking bourbon and smoking a cigar, this stuff is going to be really nice. This Bardstown stuff is going to make it that much more enjoyable.
Next time you come down and you're allowed to be 6 feet away from me, which, there probably should have been a rule for us not to be 6 feet together anyway. But one other little thing, Bart's, I built the vintage library there. So they've got all these like antique whiskeys there that I bought. One of the bottles is from the 1800s.
Oh,
so Fred, we're about to do you justice there. We're about to finally finish the vintage library. So right now,
awesome.
It's in the back room. We're not able to really display it. Fred helped curated over 400 bottles for us going back to 1896, and it's some really cool stuff. And we're about to have this beautiful vintage library that's going to have 10 seats for a special dinner situation or a special group with the bottles lining the walls. So it's going to be a cool place. We'll get that open hopefully by this summer, and we'd love to have you guys down and check it out.
Yeah.
You're christening it there, Fred.
Brad, what do you think of Fusion?
You know what? I like it, and I think it's promising. And it's, initially when I see anything that says 2.5 years old, it scares me. But when you blend it right, and this is the one thing I figured out, they know how to blend, and it's good. My favorite of their products, I can't help myself. I absolutely love the Discovery series.
Yeah, the Discovery is really good.
But I have no problem drinking the Fusion. No. I like it. It's great.
Yeah, Discovery is the bourbon drinker's bourbon.
Yeah.
I think the Armagnac finish is a real. You need to be able to appreciate finishes, because if you don't appreciate finishes, you won't like it. But the Discovery is like a little bit of old school. It's gorgeous.
Yeah,
it's really
nice. Gentlemen, I need to insert in here one more toast, and it involves Fred, and it involves dates. June 24th.
Oh, yeah.
2004. Enemy combatants attacked several Iraqi police stations in Mosul. Fred just happens to be out there. A military police unit lost one of their guys that day, Charles Kaiser. 303rd Reserve, Military Police Reserve. And another individual soldier that Kaiser served with, Steve Martin. And on the civilian side was a cop in Rhinelander, Wisconsin. He was wounded that day and died a week later at Walter Reed from injuries. And I know how that whole thing, I mentioned NCO Alley earlier. And I know how much that whole episode affected Fred. That night, I was part of a broadcast crew that was trying to send out, we were doing video interviews with General Ham, the Task Force Olympia commander, on several different networks, trying to counter what the Al-Qaeda propaganda machine was putting out about those attacks on June 24th in Mosul. But later on in NCO Alley, Fred unloaded a little bit to me on what he went through. And I know, Fred, I know to this day, 24 June it's still there for you, buddy. But I want to tell you how proud I am of you and what it is you've done and what it is you continue to do. And I want to raise a glass to Charles Kaiser and to Steve Martin of the 303rd Military Police.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Oh.
Now, Brian, I'm not gonna lie. I was half expecting you to pull up a picture, because your glass has been getting bigger and bigger.
You were what were? Oh, Brian,
Yeah, I was expecting Brian to pick up a picture because his glass.
he's amazing. This is why I say you.
Well,
have not
I got
completely. This is why I say you have not completely converted him.
Yeah.
Well, I'll work the issue as we.
I love it though, Brian. I love it. You're who you are. Good on you.
Yeah. Brian. Yeah, June 24th. It still sucks, and
I know it does, buddy.
And if anyone has ever read my book, you know what happened to me on that day, but I lived. And this day is not about me or any of us who are still who survived.
Right.
It's about those who, like Sergeant Kaiser, Dan, Joe Andreas, Sergeant Mitz. Today's about remembering them. And this whole weekend is not about barbecues or car sales or mattress sales or getting a sweet deal on something. Or, and really I realized the reason why I hadn't brought up the pandemic, the reason why I hadn't even thought about it is because this means more to me than what's going on in the world. And
yeah.
And I just wished everybody else did.
It's the one day. It's the Memorial Day is the one day. Then everybody else can go back to their worlds.
Yeah.
It's the one day.
So I'm so proud to share something like this with you guys who are part of Little America, who still think about this kind of stuff often, right? When everybody else is thinking about other things. So cheers.
But
you guys.
Mark, I want to say that I think the Bourbon community is different. The Bourbon community thinks about it. And so, but they, it's not out there to say like, this is how you should do Memorial Day. So I'll tell you how I do Memorial Day. And I would love for each one of you all to tell me about how you spend Memorial Day. It's a tradition that I started probably 2-3 years ago. I talk to my son about people who have fallen, and then I've taken that to the next level where I take him to an actual cemetery, and we read off the names of veterans who had died in the service of their country. Going and even we have a federal cemetery near us, and we even have Civil War soldiers there. So we go there and read the names of federal soldiers to Desert Storm, to the modern one, to Vietnam, and we just say their names out loud, put a penny on there, and occasionally I come across someone from the second ID,
Mm-hmm.
and I put whatever I have there. So I've brought empty bottles, and if there's someone there that's from 321 or 520, I'll put a bottle there. So, but that's how I spend my Memorial Day, is trying to teach my family to appreciate the fallen.
Awesome.
This whole thing is awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Brian, for sharing, man. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. So Fred, I tell you, I'm in a unique position because I've been the guy who served. I'm someone who is remarried, and I am married to a full bird colonel. I am now the spouse, and it's amazing because I remember my wife saying, "Well, who do you think pays your insurance? Who do you think takes the car in for inspection? Who do you think mows the yard? Who do you think does this, that, and that?" And I'm like, now as the spouse and I have a wife who actually is deployed a lot. She's worked throughout the special operations community as a JAG, and so she's deployed, and it made me appreciate. And we haven't talked a lot about that. We did talk about families, and Mark talked about families, but sometimes we forget. And it was an eye opener for me to realize, like, holy smokes, okay, some of what I thought might have been bitching was legitimate. You know what I mean? Because I am the one doing all that when she's deployed. Now she's back. She's getting ready for retirement. But it's an interesting perspective. But what's really cool about it is having a spouse who's also been committed to service. Memorial Day is even more special because she has her friends. I have my friends. We go back and we recall and we talk. And tomorrow I will do a posting on Instagram, and I probably will go with Dan because we talked about Dan today. But it's hard for me because as an instructor who carried on even after I retired, I know 20 more guys who've perished in the fight on terror. And it's every time. Here's the one thing, and I think you guys would understand this. When you share a story about someone, you're sharing a story about all.
Right.
It goes back to the team. And so tomorrow I will share a story, but the story's about all. And that's what I'll do for Memorial Day.
Yeah. And
Beautiful.
Brad, you mentioned the family aspect. You talking about the family aspect, and I think I alluded before to how my daughter Jessica, my son Stephen, my youngest son Stephen, their mom, Ryan's mom Tracy, each one remembers things, remembers the people in their own way.
That's right.
And I mean, Jessica and Stephen do things differently to remember their brother Ryan. Totally different from what I do. They don't plaster stuff all over Facebook and stuff like that. And they have their way of doing it. And Jessica has a son and a daughter now. Stephen's got two boys. One of them, the oldest one, named after Ryan. And over time, they will do things in their own way to make sure they know who their Uncle Ryan was. They're already doing it. So that's one of the things about this whole Memorial Day Gold Star family thing. everybody does things
Yeah.
in their own way. And again, that's another one of those things that over the years I've come to appreciate. It affects different people different ways, and they will express themselves in those ways. There's no wrong way to do it,
No.
as far as I'm concerned.
You're right.
Yeah, I'll just say,
I really do appreciate this today. This is really good. This is hearing about Dan and Sergeant Andres. I guarantee you, and Fred can probably attest, because he'll monitor my Facebook every so often. I'll have posts about both those individuals at some point in the next 24 hours. Even though I don't know them, never knew them, just because you gentlemen mentioned those two individuals, I'll put something on there for them because they need that. Yeah. People need to know who those individuals were. And that's the key. That's what Memorial Day is, as far as I'm concerned. So there you go.
yeah, I'm not excited that I will not be back in North Carolina this tomorrow. Learning every year, and you see a lot of the families, and pretty amazing time. So disappointed I will not be there, which is what I typically do. So my first year out here in Kentucky, I had to figure out what's next, but I'll be back in North Carolina as well at some point in the near future.
All right. Well, gentlemen, this has been a very warm conversation. This has been an opportunity to remember some great Americans, and just ask you to pick your favorite. Grab the glass that was your favorite. Let us raise a toast.
Cheers, Fred. Thanks for having us.
Cheers.
Absolutely.
Fred, thanks for the opportunity.
Yep, I appreciate it.
Thank you all. To the fallen.
Enjoyed meeting you, Brian. Look forward to having you down sometime soon.
Will do.
Come see us.
Hey, you got a godson you need to come see, and we'll go. We just got a slip and slide in, and I conked out on. Oh, I gotta stop recording before I get into all that.
Hey, Brian, real quick, are you still in Wisconsin?
Yes, I'm the new.
So that was special. It was special because you got to meet my battle buddy, godfather to my son, Oscar. You got to meet someone that we've cried a lot together. He's been there for me in my worst, and I've been there for him. And there's not a thing that I can do. Not a thing I could do that would ever replace the loss of a son. And tonight's about remembering him. And Sergeant Mitz and Sergeant Kaiser and Dan Bush and Sergeant Andreas. It's about remembering them. So tomorrow, when everyone's out grilling, and that's fine. That's fine. Take a moment to look up someone who's fallen. Pour a little bit of bourbon. Pour some on the ground for them. And learn about them. Learn their story. Share with your friends. Because you know what? They paid the ultimate sacrifice It's the least we can do. It's not about politics. It's not about anything. It's just taking a moment to have like a connection to someone who died for this country. And I feel like this community, the bourbon world, the bourbon community, it's full of great people. Great people. Oh, sure, we cut it up here and there, but, you know, at the end of the day, we all just like to sit down and talk and have a drink and learn a story. Well, I ask you, take this challenge to learn a story about someone who had paid the ultimate sacrifice and see if you can get a few other people to do the same. And just toast to them. And when you do, find a picture of them. Find a picture of them, tag me in on social media, tell me what you're toasting with them, and I'll remember them too. I'll share it. And that's the way we don't forget. Because the cost of war, it's those people. So thank you all so much for taking the time to spend this evening with me. I know it was long. What was I going to do? Was I going to cut them short? No. Besides, I'm long-winded myself. So thank you all so much, members. I'll see you all in the chat. I'm going to go do a members-only. I'll do a members-only live stream. Give me a little bit of time for that. But grab whatever in your glass, raise a toast, and thank you so much. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for listening to those stories. And thanks for bearing with me as it got tough. Cheers.